In the past 2 years, RMFG has gone from idea to full-fledged metal manufacturer. But the way we see it, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, how did this start? For sure. Where are we now? 2024, I bought this laser and I had never done manufacturing, never made a part, never done any real metal working. I grew up working on cars, that kind of thing, had a background in the trades, but really the vision was like, hey, can we help people build assembled kind of products faster? Specifically, weldments was like the real thing that we originally launched to tackle. A buddy of mine basically was making these welded mailboxes and selling them on Etsy. And he was bottlenecked by just trying to find someone that would actually make the thing for him, right? And so he could get the individual parts and he could weld them himself, but he couldn't really find anyone that would like, hey, here's my product, I'm getting off the ground. I might need 2 or 3 of these at a time, but I'm trying to grow this. Can you please just make it for me? And so it was difficult for him to find. And I thought that there was a real opportunity to basically do this kind of like, how do we help people go from nothing to like a full product? And early days, it was super slow. Like we might get like a $30 order in a day, and there might be 2 or 3 days, so we get another order. A busy week would have been maybe 10 orders. And that's how we started.
I remember those days. Although I've been working here for 7 months now, I was previously a customer for 13 months. And I remember walking in feeling like $1 million because I was probably one of just a handful of customers.
Yeah. You might have been like our first 30 customers or something.
We've had several stories like that where people have started with us early and they've grown with us because of our growing capability.
Sure.
So tell us where we were then, where we are today, and where we're going.
Really, the vision has grown a lot since then. I think the vision was more scoped down, but it was still large back then. So I think my initial vision was like, hey, we could be this ultra large, super automated, extremely fast metal fabricator. And we'll make, kind of fabricated metal things, everything from the individual components to if the factory needs a big metal assembly, all welded, assembled together, whatever, we could do that. And quickly what we found out is our fastest growing customers were companies in the robotics and I would say advanced hardware space. So these were venture-backed hardware startups. They're building custom robots in America. They're building radar systems. They're building submersibles. They're basically building smart equipment, right? And these customers wanted to move really quickly. And really the way the vision's grown since then is we want to be this contract manufacturer for the robotics industry. And I think the way that we're going to do that is we're going to spin up these individual services and grow them independent of the contract manufacturing work so that when it comes time to do those more complicated, like a full robot or whatever, we can make the custom chassis, we can make the wire harnesses, we can make maybe the gearboxes one day. And because we'll make a bunch of the custom subcomponents, we'll be a very valuable contract manufacturer. I think there's a bunch of technology and stuff that we could build as well, but that's the real way the vision has changed, is basically expanded, right? I think that there's this opportunity to do the same thing that happened in automotive, where these absolutely massive companies kind of sprung up to support this new and growing industry. I think robotics is going to be bigger than automotive. And to give you some sense of scale, the largest contract manufacturers in automotive are doing $60 billion a year plus, one company, right? And so I think that there's an opportunity to build just an absolutely enormous robotics manufacturing company that uses technology at its core to turn around parts and assemblies faster than a traditional company.
So overall, we've tracked along with the initial vision of the company.
Yeah.
And what's happened in the meantime is a lot of expansion.
Yeah.
Expansion of machinery,
right?
Headcount, capability, but also sales.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting things is this instant quote ability.
Yeah.
And that has not only, driven revenue for us, but it has converted new customers, people discovering us, and then our ability to service them has grown with that. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that story?
I think the instant quote model in manufacturing is like a cash printing machine, almost. The way a lot of manufacturers work is they take money from their customers on payment terms. So often they're buying the materials, they're doing the labor, they're making the parts, they're delivering the parts, and then they're waiting 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. And so if that's the way your business operates, it makes it extremely difficult to grow month to month, because you basically have to build up this kind of fortress balance sheet before you can invest in the next step. And so it ends up being this kind of, instead of like a straight line, it's like a step where, oh, you know, you grow for 2 years, you bank a bunch of cash, then you kind of go and expand. And it makes it more difficult to always get the bigger next purchase order, because you're having to front the money for the materials and the labor and the machines, right? And versus Instant Quo is really special property in that you get paid before you ever touch anything. So you get paid even before you get the material. Like we buy material on credit terms. So we get paid before we ever make the parts, before we spend any money on labor. And what that allows you to do is, if you're growing every month, it lets you continually hire and train new people, bring in new machines, that kind of thing. The other cool thing about Instant Quo is it just gives you more opportunity for serendipity. So your additional manufacturing business, everyone says, you know, it's very relationship based. You got to pound the pavement. You got to go meet all the customers. And we get that kind of at scale from the online tool, because customers can come in a very like low commitment way, try us out. And so our biggest customer today, their first order was, I think, $70. They bought some sheet metal parts. Next, they kind of kept increasing. Now we're doing many hundreds of thousands of dollars with them. I think we'll do more than $1 million in revenue with this customer that started with just a $70 order.
We've seen that at every single scale.
Yeah,
And
sure.
overall, just round numbers, we're basically increasing 20% month over month in the online orders.
Yeah.
Just yesterday was Sunday.
Yep.
And we had our biggest what was this spectacle?
Yeah, the biggest Sunday in the company history. And when I looked at the stats yesterday, we made more money than our average week last year around this time. And so every month
on a Sunday when people should be at church.
Yeah. They're like at the Church of Parts instead. Yeah. But things are growing, and the cool thing about this also is like now there's some opportunity to compound, right? Because you bring in X amount of customers, next month you bring in X plus whatever the delta is, and then some of those customers turn into repeat customers. We have a pretty high repeat customer rate.
The LTV in this business is, compared to businesses that I've been involved with before, pretty much off this chart.
Yeah,
we're not
for sure
selling t-shirts, we're selling basically the raw materials for other businesses to grow. And it's not just that robotics company that started with a $70 order that is now making monthly purchase orders close to $200,000. There's every single scale, even the guy that's still in the garage has spent several thousands of dollars with us. And they're still in the prototyping stage.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of like the AWS approach, right? Instead of like going after only whales, right? You're making the product as easy as possible for anyone to use, because you never know who's going to take off. And so like, if you can service a guy in his garage who only buys $40 worth of parts, you never know. That guy's product might take off and like these markets are like way, way bigger than most people realize. Like fabrication is absolutely enormous. There's so many different niches that we see customers in where we're like, how is he doing this volume like with his product? Like I can't believe it. And so I think there's just huge opportunity if you make it as easy for anyone to have this kind of manufacturing capability.
Let's walk over here and talk about some of the challenges that we've seen up until this point.
Yeah.
So growth is hard. We know that. We learn that every day in new ways over and over and over.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some specific challenges that we faced in the previous 12 months up until now?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, there's broad categories of challenges. I think one of it's kind of process/technology, where if you're growing really fast, just by the nature of that growth, if you're growing 20% every month, they're going to double in size relatively quickly. And you might have to change the way you do everything if you double in size, right? All of a sudden, you're trying to figure out how do I get more capacity out of this machine. We're building technology at the different stations when we see bottlenecks. And that has been kind of an ongoing thing. And it changes, every week probably, right? Like we see, okay, wow, there's like an enormous amount of boxes to pack. Like now we need to go build some more technology at the packing area to make, the technicians faster, make it more accurate. Or, hey, the laser used to sit idle sometimes, now basically never sits idle. And then it's like, okay, now that it's manned all the time, what's the next step to get even more capacity? Okay, and we built our own nesting software. We made it so the operators make less mistakes. We put as much of that into our own software as possible. So that's kind of one broad area, is kind of like technology/process.
I think broad is great, but I want to get into some specific instances. I'm thinking station rescue, I'm thinking buggy, and I'm thinking agents.
One kind of big step change that we made was our ability to ship new software faster to the shop floor. Basically, a shop floor employee would message in Discord, which is what we use for internal comms, say, hey, this page on my screen is kind of confusing, or so-and-so is wrong. And then I would have to go investigate. I would have to go pull up the logs. I would have to figure out what page they were talking about. The only option was like, hey, we got to grow the engineering team, or we got to make this easier to do. And we opted for figuring out a way to just make it easier. And so we made this thing called Buggy, which is like a little bug icon on every page that the shop floor uses. And when they click that, the system pulls all the logs so it can see everything that's happening in the background, the different database calls. You can see how long they were on the page. If certain queries are super long, it can see what pages the operator was on previously and how long they were on that page, and a bunch of other kind of context and information. And what it does is it spins up an agent with a whole copy of all of our system to reproduce the issue and try to solve it. And so now we went from this kind of system where I had to be free and I had to triage everything to a system where most of the problems show up and they already have a solution. And then it's my job to basically review and then approve them. And so we went from being able to close maybe 3 or 4 issues a day to some days we close 30 plus issues.
I think this is important context, because it's not just, it's a little bit of a misnomer where we say it's buggy, there's a bug. It's not just solve out this bug, it's how do I change the entire UX of this for an operator so that they can learn faster, perform faster, and we can all grow faster together.
Our operators are comfortable making like micro optimizations when it makes sense, right? They're like, I don't like that this text is right here, it needs to be bigger because it's hard to see.
And so that comes into context of like, what's the human interface look like? And that's kind of like station rescue. We solve a problem in one area of the business or one area of the shop floor specifically. And then it kind of identifies or creates a new problem where we have so much more throughput coming from one station, it's starting to bottleneck at the next one. And so what do we do then with station rescue?
So station rescue, basically, I guess the way I think about it is that sometimes the problems are technology, sometimes they're more like process oriented. And it seems station rescue is kind of like a process thing where we look at a station that's struggling. Maybe they're not even struggling. Maybe it's just, how do we get more capacity out of this station? How do we do more with less? When we look at a station, we watch, we observe, we see what the operators are doing. We see if they're using the software as intended or if they're, kind of doing workarounds. And then we try to find like a big picture way to really make that station go much better. And so like concrete example is our packing area. We started order volumes really picking up.
Let's spin around so we can show the packing area. We actually do rearrangements of this almost every 3 weeks on average. And we just rearranged it like 30 minutes ago.
For sure. And I think it'll continue to change. It's just going to change depending on the volume of parts, right? But what we did is before, QC and packing was one single step. So we'd have one person at the packing station. They would go try to, basically find all the parts in the various different totes, and they would inspect the parts, they would count them, and then they would pack them. The issue with that is you basically didn't do QC up until the point where the whole order was ready. And sometimes our customers will order many dozens of parts. So it could be the case that, you have 49 different parts ready to be QC'd, but you're waiting on that last part, and then you finally get the last part and you find out one of the parts has some kind of defect.
Number 7.
Exactly. So now you're
remade.
Right. And so what we did is made it 2 separate steps, which sounds super simple. A lot of the stuff probably sounds super simple, but it's more about the culture of, hey, noticing when things are wrong, fixing them, making it better for the next kind of doubling of the shop, right?
And rinsing and repeating and doing it not just on an ad hoc basis, but on a continuous basis. Every day, all day long.
For sure.
And then this kind of ties into how we hire and train. Because as we improve all of this, it makes it easier for somebody to step in, and it kind of arises this like chicken and the egg scenario. Where when we do hire, we kind of just throw them into the fire and watch them and see where are they stumbling. because it then elucidates what we have to fix to make it easier.
Yeah, 100%.
And it just becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy of improvement.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I like to do is like brand new employees, just watch them use the software for the first time and then see what's confusing, because, you know, you end up just getting used to software that you use. You find workarounds, you like figure out how to get around the rough edges. But if you're brand new and stuff is unobvious, then that's a clue that we could probably improve the software, make it easier. And like, this stuff really adds up and compounds, where it's like, we really think every single minute in the shop counts, right? Like every minute you're not making a part is a minute that's just waste, right? And so like, how do we actually do as much value add work as possible? And part of that is just making systems and software make everything literally just as easy as humanly possible. And so some of our stations like literally look like a video game when you pull them up, because it's like just the most intuitive way to represent what to do at that station. And we see like, okay, now we implement that change. All of a sudden, brand new people are doing parts at a very high level, very, very quickly. And so that kind of stuff is what we're going to continue to do basically forever.
Well, this is something that we work on daily and have been doing so for a year and a half, but it seems to accelerate every single day and try to find more capacity, more efficiency, more throughput. But ultimately, we kind of reach the end of our capability or our capacity with the machinery, and especially the footprint that we have. And so we've had to try and come up with the next step already predetermined, and that's kind of where we're going now. So why don't you tell us about where we are, where we need to be in the next couple months, and then eventually we'll get into the vision of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
Our cameraman is tripping. So now where are we at?
We are basically in our new building. So when we chose the building we're currently in, one thing that really attracted us to it was that there was a basically big campus here. So our portion of it, it felt huge when we moved in, right? Like we moved in super empty. We were like, it's going to take forever to fill it up. And then, you know,
it's been 7 months.
It's been 7 months. It's like, but really what we're looking at is like, where does the next kind of 10x? And so a cool thing about this property is that the whole property is vacant, and there's enormous amount of power because they've been using this property for aerospace manufacturing for the better part of half a century. And we are basically standing in the next expansion. So this is roughly 25,000 square feet, and this building has enormous amounts of power. So there's 4,000 amps for 8,000
amps.
So you could basically power all the lasers you would want. And so we're gonna land some lasers, some press brakes. We're gonna land more equipment here. We're gonna start doing a new set of services that we've been kind of gradually building up to. Electromechanical assembly is what I would say. So like our robotics companies, you know, we start making the components and we start building these weldments, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, could you actually help us do some of the assembly work that would really take a lot off our plate? A lot of customers are like reluctant robot manufacturers. They only do it because there's no one that's doing it for them. And so they want to build the software, the technology, the deployment. They want to talk to customers. And they're basically forced to do the robotic manufacturing when it's not the main thing, right? They want to do the design, et cetera. But if they add, you know, kind of this really competent partner that could help them, it takes a lot off their plate. It helps them scale faster. And so we're now getting to a point where we're doing some of that work for some of our customers. I think that we could be the best, fastest contract manufacturer for robotics, advanced hardware companies, people who are building, you know, AMRs, they're building submersible robots, et cetera. Like basically the real vision is we'll make as many of the sub-components as possible in-house, the custom stuff. And we'll get really, really good at doing that, where we can offer that at a super quick pace, really reliably. We grow that capacity kind of independent of the contract manufacturing. And then we can compose those into higher value work for the customers who need it. I talk about the robot side a lot, and we have a lot of customers that do other stuff, and we likely can do a lot of the same sort of thing for them, right? Like if you're a guy who you want to launch a new, you know, bumper line for an off-road pickup, but you don't want to actually stand up all the manufacturing equipment to do that, we can help you start with 1 and then 10 and then, you know, eventually 1,000 plus units. And so
we've kind of come to the end of the arc of the whole story here, but there's, you know, several dozen little anecdotes of things that we've explored, such as wiring. We've already cut several POs and delivered several orders for some pretty basic wiring, but this all fits into the larger puzzle of what we're trying to solve.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of this stuff, like you look at it and it's like, there's literally no reason this cannot be made in America. Like, I think my golden example is like AMR robots. These are the warehouse robots. You could probably put one up on the screen. They're little squares and they hold maybe 150 pounds. These things cost as much as a Cybertruck. And, you know, usually you have to buy them through a system integrator, and a lot of these are foreign made. And so if that thing costs as much as Cybertruck, there's literally no reason we can't make it in America. It's just a matter of people putting the effort.
And they're simple. They're simple.
Yeah, I mean, it's got like 4 motors, you know, it's obviously got some electronics and cameras, et cetera. It's got some metal structures, but just the industry in general has been really hard to build those kind of things here unless you do it all yourself. And so we think that we could play a big part in like helping new companies spin up those types of products. And we're already helping multiple companies do similar types of stuff today.
Well, it's all very exciting. I've already said that I've been here 7 months, and today looks so different than just a month ago, 2 months ago, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
I think, anyway, wherever this goes is going to be an awesome ride. And hopefully we go way past all the way.
Yeah, I won't be satisfied until we make millions and millions of robots a year. Like, I think that's totally possible.